Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for joining me this afternoon to our first Q&A about suffering. And I'd like to first ask if I can be heard out there. This is all new, so if someone would like to say, yes, you can hear me, or no, you can't hear me, or I'm too soft, just please do so. That would be helpful. In the meantime, this is a Q&A regarding suffering, whether it is from the videos that I've presented, or maybe there's a question that I haven't covered yet that you'd like to know about suffering. And this is the place to do it. And maybe it can be a benefit to other people who are attending or watch this video later. But first, I would like to start with a real brief meditation, just a minute or so, and help everybody become grounded in the present moment. Okay. There is one question so far. Question is from Brenda Ball. How did you get started in this field of study? Well, that's a good question. I got started, I guess you could say I got started back at the end of 2006. I had an aunt who had gifted me a book at Christmas. and it was Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth. And excuse me, at the time, I really wasn't ready for a book like that. So it sat on the shelf for probably about a year and a half. And then I'm not really sure what possessed me, other than I think at the time in 2008, I was suffering quite a bit. And so I decided to read it. And it was very eye-opening. And as I was reading through it, much of what Eckhart was writing about made a tremendous amount of sense. And it was as if little light bulbs kind of went off as I was reading through the book. And it kind of started the healing journey in a sense, because now I was having a little bit more of an understanding of who I was, or who I had become by that point in my life. And from there, it seemed as if after I'd finished the book, everything that I had read made sense, but yet didn't really sink in, because I spent the next 2 years or so in even more suffering. And I was suffering at home because of a situation with a neighbor. I was suffering at work. And I was trying to do everything and still manage to have some sort of a life outside of all that. And so I was really in a very, very dark place, starting to experience a number of health issues. And I kind of went back to the book, had to read it a second time. And then I actually purchased his first book, The Power of Now, started reading through that. And that took a little while, and the suffering was so extensive. Finally got an opportunity to move from the place that I was living at, and things started to improve a little bit. And then in 2012, I decided to leave the job that was so stressful and very unfulfilling, because I wanted to do something different. I wanted to sort of take a more, I guess you could say, spiritual course in my life, just to understand even more about who I had become, and perhaps at some point find out who I truly am. And so I left the job in May of 2012 and started a bit of a journey towards, I went into metaphysics for a little while, and I took some courses, took some online courses to understand more about the mind and how it becomes trapped in a lot of its own problems, and how to work through those issues. The whole idea was to, at some point, maybe be able to work with clients kind of as maybe as a spiritual life coach of some sort. I guess maybe that's the direction I was looking for. And then in 2014, I came upon an individual in the area that I was living in that had a small group of people who are interested in spirituality, and we met excuse me, about once a month or so. And through that, um, I got the suggestion of perhaps writing a book regarding a lot of what I had learned from Eckhart Tolle through my classes, through other sources. And so I said, sure, that might be a great idea. So I started pursuing writing a book, and at the same time, I had joined a Buddhist religious group, Sangha as they call it, and which was, tremendously helpful as far as uh, helping me to stay grounded in times of feeling very ungrounded, and stayed with the Sangha for a number of years, and I kept putting information together on this book, and it just kept evolving, and it kept evolving, and it kept evolving, and it was getting huge. And I decided, well, at some point here, either I've got to publish the book, but at the time, I don't think I was really ready to do that. And certainly from doing all of these videos, it was quite evident that I was nowhere near ready to produce a book. And so I decided in the early 2023 to do these videos. Actually, the end of 22, and to do these videos instead. Because in a way, what I had learned through a lot of my suffering and understanding was that it's kind of everybody's life purpose to help others and however they can. For some people, it is volunteerism, getting, kind of hands-on with individuals in need. Other people like to give money to charity, and that's fine. And I figured by producing these videos, even if it helps just one individual, then it's worth doing. It's worth all the time, with all the effort of putting all of the information together from various sources, from my own insights, my own experiences, my own suffering. It's all worth it. And so that's really how all the videos came to be. That's how I got into the field of it's really not a field that you can sort of pin down, because there's a lot of psychology. Maybe there's some splashes of Buddhist wisdom that's in the material that I present. And certainly, again, my own insights and experiences. And so it's really hard to say. And again, it's not a field, and I'd never claimed to be an expert in any particular field, except suffering, of course. So that's how everything sort of came to be. And right now, we're in the last chapter, I guess you could call it, of the book. The video that just posted today was about allowing laughter as part of the 9 important elements, allowing. And so that's the second of the 9. We still have 7 more to go. And then we're going to move into we've gone from heal and honor the psychological mind to the physical body. Next, we're going to touch a little bit about heal and honor nature. And then the last section of the book is going to be regarding fundamental shifts in society. some things that need to change to help facilitate a lessening of suffering, possibly, I won't say a total end of suffering, but a large eradication of suffering. Um, and then that will basically round out the video series, which probably is going to extend into July, maybe August, just as a heads up. So are there any more questions? Been on for about 15 minutes now. Any specific questions about suffering itself? Something maybe that I've presented in a video that you don't understand, doesn't make sense, need a little more clarification on. Maybe it's something that I haven't covered yet. This is not designed to be a complete everything about suffering. I do cover a lot of material in a lot of different directions, but just in going through my own notes, there's a lot of things that don't make it into the videos for one reason or another. Well, there aren't any questions at the moment. I guess what really kind of concerns me in regards to suffering is that society in general really doesn't seem all that interested in resolving the issues that cause us to suffer. It's certainly more fun to escape suffering through our various distractions, whether it be social media, entertainment, music, getting lost in social circles. But it's kind of concerning because the main issues behind suffering, which is individually driven, which then becomes part of the collective, remains unresolved. And we're passing it on to the next generation and subsequent generations. And I think with the rise of things like technology, that suffering, in a sense, is going to exponentially increase. And the reason I say that is I'm also deeply concerned about the technology itself. We hear a tremendous amount about AI and how potentially dangerous AI can be. And everybody's trying to figure out, well, how can we prevent AI from, in a sense, taking over and usurping our individual and collective control, that if we are unable to do so, and it unleashes itself in a sense. And I think that's really where the direction is going to be. I don't think anybody's going to be able to have control over it once the genie's out of the bottle, as they say. That we as a society could suffer far more, I think, than anyone really can imagine at this point. to some extent, we're seeing a little bit of that already. We're seeing how AI is replacing jobs. So there becomes a question, what happens to the people who used to do these jobs that AI does now? It's a huge social concern. I get a lot of information, a lot of feeds through just in my own internet travels about the rise of cyber crimes. It's all technology driven. How even criminal organizations and gangs are turning to online fraud and theft and all that, hacking, as a way of making their money because they can't get caught. It's not a physical crime anymore. And so those kind of areas there, I think, at least those two areas, and maybe more, that I think will be hugely, hugely challenging for humanity in the future going forward. And another question from Brenda. There is so much to cover. Why don't men cry more often? Why do they try to clam up? How can moms encourage their sons that it is okay? Well, a lot of men don't cry because they're conditioned not to. I know that sounds perhaps a little ridiculous, but it happens. They're conditioned early on, whether it be from a parental example, say a father that is never emotional in that sense, never cries, conveys to his son, it's not manly to cry, and only babies cry. You don't want to be called a baby. Or women are supposedly more emotional, so they're the only ones that are supposed to cry. We're supposed to be tough, resilient, all of that, machoism, you name it. And so a lot of men, instead of crying, turn to anger. And because that is, to some extent, it's primal, because throughout our ancient ancestors, men were the ones that went out to hunt and gather, to protect the clan, to protect the family, to protect the group. So they're quote unquote natural born aggressors. But we also have a feminine side, insofar as we have, most of us anyway, have a mother that dearly loves us as an infant, as a child, nurtures us, will do practically anything for us to help protect us, to help us make everything okay, feel okay when we're suffering. And that's still within us. That's something that men can also be conditioned with. However, in the social realm, in the social circles amongst other men, being overly emotional in that sense of crying is just not really accepted. And there's that other component that of ridicule, criticism, rejection, because some younger boys that were still perhaps maybe crying in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, would be criticized by their classmates, by other boys that they wanted to be friends with, be included with, be a part of. And so they had to learn that if if I was to be accepted by the other boys, I can't cry anymore. They don't like that. They ridicule and reject me. So they learn that, and that becomes, unfortunately, part of who they are. And sometimes it takes the loss of someone that they cared for, cared about, even loved, for them to show that kind of emotion. Sometimes it could be a situation where they're really having a tough time. They're on the down and out. They're stranded. All sorts of things where they feel like they've hit rock bottom, and somebody lifts them up in some way. That can be tears of joy as well as tears of pain shedding at the same time. And as far as how can moms encourage their sons that it's okay to cry? That in itself is a good question. Um, I would have to say that they can appeal to the feminine side within their sons, within men, without overtly saying so. They can encourage them that, again, reverting back to their childhood, that they will feel better once they cry and get everything off their chest. And that in itself can be very helpful. And of course, still being as loving and as nurturing as they were to the man when he was a child, will trigger those memories. We don't necessarily remember all the awesome things that happened to us. We don't necessarily always remember the traumatic things that happened to us. We can remember those times where people comforted us, helped us out, made a difference to us in our emotional state. And so in a sense, that can sort of trigger the body to just let go and finally let the tears flow. So, and a lot of that too is what kind of a relationship that the mother and the son had, or still have anyway. If there's any resentment from the son or even from the mother towards either one, or maybe there's some bad family history issues between the two, that can certainly make a difference as to whether or not a mother can help her son let those emotions go. And again, the son himself has to kind of come to the table with being okay to be a bit vulnerable, because that's essentially what happens when you are crying is you become vulnerable. You're showing your vulnerability. You're you could say letting your guard down, but you're opening up perhaps that protective shell, that shield of armor that a lot of men do present themselves as and hide behind as this shield of armor, that nothing can get past that. I'm not going to let anything get past that. Physical, psychological, maybe even spiritual. So they kind of have to come to the table with the willingness to work through that suffering through crying. So that it's kind of a two-way street on that. Okay, any more questions? Figure we'll try to make this first Q&A for about an hour, and then we will try maybe again next month as we start moving closer towards the end of the book to have another Q&A. One thing I do need to do, which I may not have done this time, is to repost again that going to have an upcoming live stream. I didn't do that this time. I was kind of hoping that the announcement of the live stream that I had posted about a week ago would get sent out to everybody, and maybe it did. I don't know. YouTube is a little strange. Some notifications go out. They tell you that some people may get these notifications. I don't always get notifications of people that subscribe to my channel, so it's still a bit of a mystery to me. But we'll work it out. But any additional questions about suffering? Other than, as I had mentioned, I think at some point, is that I can't help with anything specific problem that somebody might have. It's not my expertise, but just kind of anything suffering in general. Is there maybe any subject about suffering that I haven't covered that perhaps we could cover a little bit here if I'm not already going to be covering it before the end of this video series? We can do that too. And so we're in the realm of healing and honoring the psychological mind. And as I had mentioned at the beginning of this particular section, it's important to seek resolution for psychological issues first and foremost. Most people almost immediately go to physical because they're experiencing physical pain of some sort, or maybe they have some sort of a condition or a disease or a syndrome of some sort, a disorder. And so they're seeking answers there, which they might be able to get some temporary relief. However, if there's psychological components behind what these issues may be, the relief that they get will be temporary at best, because they're not dealing with the core issue. And I know that the core issue can sometimes be quite challenging. The reason being is we as a society, and even as a science, don't fully understand how the mind works. And I have to think as well, too, that there are elements beyond what we understand psychologically and even physically about the mind that can influence or outright cause certain situations for each of us. And it's kind of in an interesting field that I've kind of slowly moved into, and it's the field of spirituality. And it's a bit of a nebulous field only because it's not one of those things you can pin down under a microscope scientifically. But there is a fair amount of psychological evidence, reporting, whatever you'd like to call it, of people that have experiences or are experiencing something in regards to their health or well-being that is being influenced on a spiritual level, meaning that there are entities, perhaps, that sort of, it's kind of hard to describe, but they sort of split off once the individual body itself can no longer support life. The soul, if you will, or spirit, however you want to define it, leaves the physical body and sometimes goes to the light, while at other times stays on the earthly plane and sometimes immediately attaches, if you will, to other individuals, a lot of times within the same family, but not always. Or they are attracted to others that particular entity experienced in the physical body that it just left. For example, say someone was an alcoholic, they passed away, their spirit stays on the earthly plane for whatever reason, then they will search out and attach themselves to a live alcoholic to, in a sense, to sort of extend their experience in the physical world through the physical body. So it's kind of fascinating. And there are also dark forces. I wouldn't necessarily classify them as demonic, but there are those. This would be just simply dark force energies that have been convinced, in a sense, through others in the realm of the dark forces that the light is dangerous for them. And so they sort of live in this dark force and they feed off of negative energies that people emit, whether it's in thought, whether it's in speech, whether it's in action. And so they attach themselves. And some people can have literally dozens of entities. They're called discarnate entities and dark force energies that are attached to various levels of the being, not necessarily physical, not necessarily psychological, but in other ethereal bodies that we may in fact have. You've probably heard people say things like the astral plane, out of body experiences, things like that. So it's kind of in that realm. And it does seem kind of fascinating because for some people that have really hardcore addictions that they're just not able to relinquish themselves from because, or even though that they've tried countless treatment programs and so forth, it's because they're being dogged, if you will, by these discarnate entities, dark force energies. So it just kind of blossoms and blooms from that. It's a very fascinating area to look at in conjunction with the material that I've presented here, insofar as I've mentioned a lot about subpersonalities that form, that split off of our main ego during traumatic life situations, as well as even exciting situations that we've had in our life. It's not all just bad that these subpersonalities can form. And when I say that we sort of become possessed by them during moments of pain and trauma in the future that were similar to the instances, the circumstances from which the subpersonality formed in childhood, we really could be also talking about discarnate entities and dark force energies as adjuncts to the subpersonalities. Because if you back away from all of the nitty gritty on that, what we're talking about here is energy, vibration, and frequency. That's really kind of what most everything boils down to. Everything is energy, some form or multiple forms of energy. That includes our thoughts. So even if we aren't doing anything negative or hurtful, if we have those thoughts in the mind, that is, it's like we're beaming that information. And it kind of dovetails into what I had spoken of quite a bit earlier in these videos, was the law of attraction and repulsion. It's not just attraction only. There's a repulsion component of that as well. And so we attract these energies through thoughts, through our negative experiences, our pain, our trauma, through our excitement, through our happiness, through our joy, always attracting. We're always emitting these energies. Even just the body itself has energies that it's emitting, never mind what we're thinking about or doing or saying. The body is always emitting energies. The heart itself is tremendous in its electromagnetic energy potential that can be measured feet, yards out from the body. And so anyway, everything comes back to the energy and vibration. And so in a sense, when we're thinking negatively, we're going to attract negativity, because like energies tend to coalesce with like energies. You've heard of the opposites attract. Sometimes that does happen, but not generally. Generally, it's like attracts like. So when we have these bad experiences, these traumatic experiences, and we don't resolve them, we hold on to resentment, we have hatred, we have anger. All of these are attracting potentially other people, also spirit, and other energies that we don't even know exist, we're not aware of. Anyway, that's all quite fascinating. That might be a segment that I sort of get into later on this year. We'll kind of wait and see. I'm more focused right now, obviously, on completing this material for everyone, and I think we'll be doing a live stream when everything is done, just as a final live stream, so that people can, ask any more questions and whatnot. But any more questions out there? We have probably about 15 more minutes, and then we will bring it to a close for this time around. Don't wish for this to be a totally one-way conversation, as you will. Question from Kira. How did you come to gain all of this knowledge? How long did it take? Well, as I had mentioned at the beginning of this live stream, the seed was, if you will, was planted in 2006, and that little seed kind of struggled for a couple of years, and my suffering sort of was blooming right alongside of it, growing. And at some point I sort of hit a brick wall in 2010, 2011, around in that area. And I knew something had to change in my life. I was having some really adverse health issues. I was under a tremendous amount of stress and strain from personal and work experiences. And I wanted out of all of that, obviously. Nobody likes to suffer. And so I took it upon myself to get into some various fields of, it started out as in metaphysics. I went that route for a little while. Actually took I guess you could call it online, but it was also through the mail as well, a course through a metaphysical university out in California. Completed that program. I got then, after that, maybe a year or two after that, I got into a Buddhist Sangha, a group that was in my area. Attended what they call a day of mindfulness. And I really, really enjoyed it. I felt, gosh, this is for me. This is great. And I think it can help me kind of understand why I'm suffering so much. Because I was literally clueless. And I also had mentioned that I was gifted a book, Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, in that Christmas of 2006. And that was the seed that got planted. And then about 2014, after also taking sort of an online course that was going to go sort of in the field of life coaching, I decided to put a book together. It was suggested to me as a way of sort of getting my foot into the door into the realm of helping others. And I like to write. So I started writing, and I took a lot of the knowledge that I had gained through my practice in Buddhism, through the books I was reading in Buddhism, and I started getting heavily into meditation. And it really was through meditation where a lot of this material that I've been presenting actually came from. Because as people read, they retain information, obviously, both consciously and subconsciously. We retain that information. And sometimes we don't realize it until we're maybe talking with others, or we're writing, or we're meditating, and this information comes up again. But the important part there was, how does this relate to me? Where do I see this? How can this concept or this insight help me in understanding why I suffer? And so that was an evolving process. Because whereas certain stresses were off of me by about this time, 2014, 2015. A new stress sort of came into play to replace those, if you will. So again, I was back under stress, suffering, but I was determined. I would like to understand why. How as well? How am I able to lessen this, end this in some way? So I kept at it. So I'd been writing for 8 years, all this information, reading a lot of stuff from everywhere, again, more insights. And I was just pouring all this stuff into more or less little 3x5 cards. And that's how this all came to be, is the videos that I do is, in a sense, each of the offerings that I provide are little 3x5 cards, trying to organize tremendous amount of information sort of together so it kind of fit and made sense, and one sort of led to the other. And at some point I did want to produce a book in 2022, but then I got the idea, I'm not sure where this came from either. It's like, why not do videos? Why not do videos and present the information to others? Which was really a good idea, because as I've been going through my material and rereading the little cards, if you will, the book was not ready in its condition to be published as it was. It was kind of a number of errors, poor writing, things didn't make sense. It was a bit of a mess. So in going through these videos and producing the material for these videos, it gives me an excellent opportunity to re-edit, and so that I can be more clear, maybe provide a little bit more information through just the understanding that I get in my interactions on the internet, my insights that I get through meditation, and then presenting the information to everyone. And doing it really free of charge, because, as I mentioned again at the beginning, I think it's part of everyone's life purpose to help others in whatever ways they can, whether it's through volunteerism, maybe donating money. In my particular case, it's hopefully presenting some information that can hopefully make a difference to others out there. And I even thought, if this channel really doesn't go anywhere, even after I present all the information, if I help at least one person suffer less, it was all totally worth it. And so that's why I continue to do it. I enjoy doing it. And because I know at some point it's going to make a difference. Maybe not immediately. Maybe I'm planting seeds in the people that subscribe and watch these particular videos, because a lot of people simply aren't ready to resolve their suffering. Maybe some people are just curious, and that's great. At least have a little bit of interest. Something brought them here, more than just the fact that it's a live stream that you can search for on YouTube, but or even on my videos. So that's why I do it. And like I said, I really, really hope that people get some good information out of it that's going to help them take little baby steps, if necessary, towards lessening or ending their suffering. So thanks for the question, Kira. And thank you for loving my videos. And I love that you love my videos. And as I had also mentioned earlier on, we're about maybe 40% through the final chapter in the book that I originally put together. We just did Allowing Laughter today as part of the 9 important elements. So we have 7 more to go out of that. We're going to move into heal and honor the physical body next. We're going to go in from there to heal and honor the natural world next. And then the very final part of the book will be fundamental societal shifts that need to happen to lessen human suffering. And so there's going to be probably, that's going to be maybe a little bit of a controversial section in there. I don't really intend it to be. I try to present, excuse me, I try to present the information as non-biased as possible, as just, here's the situation, here's what we as a society or individually are potentially dealing with that we can contemplate on. And even for the people out there, the subject might be, too large to effectively do anything about, but what can we still do individually to be aware of situations that may be coming down the line in society, situations that are already here that are causing suffering, so that perhaps we don't add to it. Perhaps in our own social circles, we can make small enough changes that can start affecting other groups. And in a sense, kind of have that domino effect. Because one of the things that I do emphasize is that the unfortunate thing about healing in a collective capacity is that it's not going to happen in one lifetime. But I think it's important to start at some point, start with ourselves individually to help lessen suffering so that we can be examples to others, whether it's in our social groups and most definitely with our children, whether we have children right now, whether we're thinking about having children, because that's the crux, and that's really going to be sort of the emphasis towards the end of this particular chapter and the end of the book is on parenting, that parent-child relationship in helping the future to suffer less. We can certainly do a lot now. Each of us can certainly do a lot individually, but the emphasis needs to be on the future generations because it's going to take time to heal the world. And we can't expect miracles overnight. It certainly didn't happen overnight that we got here where we are in such an insufferable state across the globe. So that's going to be a major emphasis, and I hope that everybody that watches these videos and enjoys these videos will get a lot out of that particular segment of the book, and that's probably a few months down the road. There's still a lot of material to cover between them. Gary, you have another question. Do you have any advice for dealing with difficult family members who are deeply unhealed and project that onto you? Would you recommend distancing from them? Well, the distancing sometimes is sort of a classic reactivity because we don't want to be around people that are negative all the time. One of the things that I found in my own experiences and in my own insights, because I've had a family member who was a very difficult person, and what I learned is that person is there for a reason and is the way they are for a reason. And it's not wholly unto themselves and their own suffering, but they're also there for my suffering, meaning that people who are difficult, family members can be, especially challenging, but anybody that we have in our life can really be their own teacher, teaching to us, because in some ways they may be reflecting back to us aspects about ourselves that we dislike. And so in that case, are we projecting back onto them, even though they're projecting back onto us, or we see it as them initially projecting onto us, but could we be projecting back onto them as well? Now, especially in family situations, as much as we'd like to think otherwise, many of us carry a lot of the attributes of one or both parents. Generally, we could say that the daughters carry a lot of their mother's aspects and the sons their father, but that's not always the case. There may be some intermixing. There may be a son that carries a lot of attributes of the mother because of an absent father either physically not there or emotionally not there, and vice versa. And part of what our life purpose is to really, the suffering that we do experience, yes, has that individual component because it is our life. We've had these individual experiences that have happened to us, but there's also that ancestral component that we pass down from generation to generation, a lot of times unknowingly, unconsciously. We pass these down. And so for us to be able to deal with difficult family members, we have to be able to see them for who they are, which is somebody who's suffering, somebody who is probably unaware that they're suffering, may not even care that they're suffering, apparently doesn't seem to care if they're causing or triggering suffering in other family members. But what can we learn from that? What may be within us that is causing us to resent them rather than, in a sense, loving them despite their flaws, despite how they treat us? Because again, most people who react or act towards us in a negative fashion are simply expressing their suffering in sometimes inappropriate ways. But how we actually work through that in our own capacity, find a little bit of forgiveness, a little bit of compassion, because they are suffering. And sometimes that can make a tremendous difference. As well as perhaps if we get to a point within our own healing of being able to be grateful that these individuals are in our life because they are helping to teach us. And anything that we can learn through our family experiences can really help us in other, social situations. So I hope that helps a little bit. But again, I don't feel that running away is always the best. In some situations, we may feel no choice but to run away because it's abusive, whatever. But hopefully that's not your particular situation. But yeah, I think it's important to not run away, but to face it in a compassionate way, in a loving way, even if they're not willing to give the love and compassion back. That again would be putting conditions, and they're really, love and compassion don't have conditions. The true love and compassion don't have conditions. All right. Any more questions? We're about an hour and 4 minutes into this. You're welcome, Kira. And like I had mentioned earlier on in the live stream, may have another one of these perhaps next month sometime. I guess Saturday seems to be an okay day. Sunday, I think, is a day for a lot of people to be doing something religious or family oriented. Weekday, a lot of people work. Weeknights, kind of by, I don't know, 6, 7 o'clock at night, I'm not functioning very well. I'm usually a morning person, so it tends to lend more onto a Saturday. So I may do this again on a Saturday in April. I will put a post. And again, I don't know why YouTube doesn't send the posts out to subscribers. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It seems very nebulous. But I'll post there, and I'll have some sort of a live stream upcoming thing coming and posted early part of that week or something to give people plenty of heads up. So hopefully they have an opportunity to rejoin again, and we'll see how it goes the next time. So, oh, sorry, we have one other. Oh, Jovi Joy. Sorry about that you had only just arrived. Well, for you, Jovi, I guess this is recording, so I should be able to save this. So if you want to rewatch it after it's been posted, I should be able to post it fairly immediately. Then please do so. But yes, we'll have another one probably during the month of April, early part of April or so. But anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now. I do appreciate everybody joining me, and I look forward to seeing you the next time, and I look forward to presenting more videos for you. Thank you all again, and have a good rest of your day.